This is the Bizgnus Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
To get to the top in your career, be quiet and listen. That's the advice of Cash Nickerson, entrepreneur, author, and the guest on this podcast. But while it sounds simple, listening, like any skill, finds that few reach the top tier. Let's start with an odd question, Cash. Would you tell our audience, how did you get that nickname? That isn't what your mom called you.
It's exactly what my mom called me, and it was my mom's idea. She wanted it to be my first name. It's actually my middle name. And, we were, let's just say, very modest circumstances. When I was born in Philadelphia, they had moved from Florida and fit everything they owned in the trunk of their car. And so my mother had a job selling vacuum cleaners at J.C. Penney, found out that his name actually was James Cash Penney, and wanted to call me Cash. And there was a movie came out about that time called Cash McCall, starring a young James Garner. My father thought it was too brash, and of course in 1959 it probably was, but they gave it to me as my middle name. So it's my actual middle name. I'm Stephen Cash, but Cash is what everyone calls me because of the nature of the entrepreneurial career I've had.
Well, tell our audience a little bit about that career, because now it's worldwide, even if it has to be by Zoom.
Yeah. So, I'm trained in both law and business. I have both a law degree and an MBA, and worked for big companies and big law firms when I was younger, and then got into entrepreneurial activities, a lot surrounding kind of the jobs economy and staffing companies and HR related matters, and ultimately joined and bought into a company and partnered with a fellow on a technical staffing firm called PDS Tech, which is one of the largest aerospace and defense staffing firms in the United States. And we built that together over 15 plus years and sold it in 2018 to Aka Technologies. Aka Technologies is a global publicly traded company that provides worldwide consulting and innovative solutions to companies generally in the mobility space. We had a very large aerospace client. They had the other very large aerospace client. So we do a lot of work in the areas of automotive, aerospace, and life sciences. So it's a very high-tech company that meshed well with our high-tech staffing company.
Many of our audience members may recognize your name as an author of just seemingly an unending stream of books, but several have dealt with the topic we're going to touch on today, and that is listening. Why everybody listens, don't they?
That's a really good question. And sometimes I feel awkward writing about listening because it seems so obvious, but it's not knowing about listening. It's not knowing what you should do. It's changing your behavior to do it. And as I looked back on a 30 plus year career, it really dawned on me that among the soft skills that really determine how far people went in their careers, how successful people were, how well liked they were, that listening was absolutely at the heart of that success. And we attribute it to talkers, but the fact of the matter is the listeners go further.
Now, wait a minute. I did say everybody listens. Is this a skill that you have to hone, or is this something that's just natural? You have it all your life?
It is absolutely a learnable, teachable skill. And that doesn't mean that there aren't some people that are naturally better at it out of the gate. Introverts tend to be great listeners, but they don't necessarily tell you what they've learned or heard. And extroverts often are not as good at listening and better at talking. And so I would say that myself, really, I had a personal journey in listening. I was not a very good listener. I realized that, and as I started to study it and write about it and teach it, all of a sudden it was like, wow, I was really much worse than I thought at listening.
How did you discover that you weren't a good listener? Because that's not something people are going to say to themselves. Well, darn it, I'm not a good listener.
And that's part of the problem. We all think we're good listeners. We all say we're good listeners. We have a perception of ourselves that's completely skewed around our ego. And ego is one of the big challenges. So I I met some people, interacted with some people. Ross Perot was one of them, and everyone thinks of him as a talker. You know, Ross Perot was an incredible listener, and if you want to remember the importance of listening, um, he had very large ears. You know, he just died in the last year, but he was an incredible listener, and he formed $2 billion companies just by listening to customers. So I can say that he's a really good example of actually a great listener, and he was a talker, but he would listen. He went to customers, and customers would say, you know, these computers you're selling are great. He started out as an IBM salesperson, and you know, when he came out of the Navy. By the way, he reached his annual sales quota by January 18th. That's his first year, and that was one of the first years IBM had sales quotas. But he was out pushing computers, but he was listening to customers who were buying computers and saying, you know, I just wish I had services to go with it. And his bosses back at IBM said, go sell more computers. And so the companies he created, EDS, Perot Systems, these were all based around listening to what customers wanted as opposed to pushing your product across the table.
Now, in addition to being quiet while somebody else is talking, what should a good listener do to listen well?
Well, see, you know, I'm watching you, for example, Douglas. I'm watching your listening skills. And one of the things that you do very well is you react to what I'm saying, not like a zombie and just sit there and just be quiet, but you nod your head, you change your facial expression, you tilt your head. There's many things I'm seeing. Yeah, exactly. I'm seeing you do. And it shows the power, even in a world of Zoom, the power of being able to watch the other person. Because what people tend to do is they stop listening very quickly to what you're saying for a variety of reasons. One, they decide they have a better idea. Two, they decide they disagree with you. Three, they're just tired of hearing you talk. They want to talk. You know, there's a lot of different reasons, but you can tell by watching somebody's face when they've stopped listening to you. They look away, they do this. And so we do, and maybe with Stephen Covey said, we listen to react, we listen to respond. We don't listen to listen.
I remember sitting in some focus groups when I was in another part of my spotted career, and we would play promotional announcements and kind of watch the people sitting around the table, and their eyes glazed over in seemingly in milliseconds. How on earth do you keep their attention if you are the speaker trying to get across uh, your point, whether it's a marketing message or something far more complex?
That's an excellent question. And there is a very simple secret answer. If people stop listening to you, you should stop talking.
That would make a lot of commercials very short on TV, wouldn't it?
Silence, Douglas, is one of the best techniques in listening, is to just be quiet, because so many great things happen after you shut up in terms of communication.
That sounds like something I should put over the door. Maybe I could sell that sign to a lot of people if they would only listen to me. And as you have, your books on better listening have been out for a while. What's been the reaction to them since you've written them? And are you thinking of doing some sort of sequel?
Yeah, listening is a martial art, for example was the 2016 finalist in Book of the Year for Sales and Leadership. If you're in sales or leadership, listening skills are what would take you to the next level. Everybody wants to say, what should I say? What should I say? Well, you should ask and listen. Ask and listen, get them talking. That's how you find opportunities. And the same with leadership. You want to understand what's on employees' minds, what they're thinking. You can hire a consulting firm. All they're going to come in and do is ask questions you should be asking. So I have, listening as a martial art was extremely well received, and I followed that up with the Samurai Listener, which includes a 90-day plan to becoming a better listener. And now
has nothing to do with swordsmanship.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's one of my mottos is don't come into a meeting, don't come into a sales call, don't come into an interview, don't come into anything with your sword drawn. Because when you come in with your sword drawn, people put their shields up. And so you're just not going to get the best of that person. You're not going to get what's really on that person's mind. What you're going to get is defensiveness, less information. And so the sword is a fascinating example. And people come in sword drawn all the time. They come in and they just start da 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 da. And it's like, boom, it's, you know what, the person doing that has lost all opportunity to learn and understand anything. And so my next book is about negotiating, and it's coming out in July. It's going to be published by Made for Success. And that book about negotiating will include a lot of listening tactics and then other things around the humanness and the human side of negotiating.
Well, being a negotiator has to be one of the toughest jobs on the planet. I think I'd much rather be a rocket scientist or something like that.
Yeah, negotiating. It's interesting because almost every aspect of our lives every day involves some form of negotiation, because there's always something someone wants from us who's around us, and there's something we want from them. And so negotiating is like breathing. It's a constant activity. Listening plays a key role in negotiating, because you come in with what you want, and I'll tell you, you'll get a fight. You come in with, Douglas, what are you looking for? I think one of the premises I have on negotiating is that most people don't know what they want. And even if they say what they want, they really haven't thought it through. So negotiating is a discovery process, a learning process about what the why of things. And that comes through an ask and listen strategy rather than I want. So I say, don't ask what, ask why.
Do you have to ask tough questions? Do you have to be Mike Wallace all the time?
No, and that's going to turn people off. You have to create an environment where people are willing to not be afraid. Fear clams people up. It's all negotiating and human interaction. It's very human at the end of the day, and that means all those human skills come to play. So if you're confrontational, you're going to get confrontational back. If you lie, someone's going to lie better back. I mean, we are very much tit for tat human beings and organisms. I call it in my new book, tit for tat plus. Somebody gives you a little playful punch in the arm in high school, and you're going to punch them back, not the same amount, slightly harder. And so any tactic you use that's not acceptable in human realms or questionable, they're going to come back, not just what you did, but one level beyond. And that's how things escalate. And we live in a world of escalation, don't we? And tension.
Well, it sure seems so. How
I talk about, and this comes from my martial arts training and background, the importance of getting rid of your own tension. Because if you bring tension to a situation, you give tension to the other person. They're tense, you're tense. real exchange, real discovery, real learning doesn't happen.
It sounds like good advice for anybody in any business, including, of course, attorneys, as you have to find out what the other side really wants. But you said a few minutes ago that often people don't know what they want. How could that be?
Well, it's because the discovery process, we don't have internally a very good mechanism for examining our motives. we, we, deals, transactions are very emotional. And by definition, emotional often hasn't gone through the sort of intellectual filters we have available through our brain, you know, and it can relate back to childhood. You think about it, you want something, you don't get it, you throw a temper tantrum. Hey, you get rewarded by your parents. Adults are just kids who have been rewarded and punished for certain behaviors. And when they come into the workplace, if you're an employer, you very much are dealing with how someone was raised, how someone was rewarded, how someone was punished. And it's how much parental training are you aware of with respect to how we deal with people? Dr. Seuss has been in the news. You'll get a kick out of this. Dr. Seuss has been in the news. One of my favorite books as a kid was Green Eggs and Ham. And Green Eggs and Ham is sometimes used as a sort of like, hey, look at the value of persistence in sales. And you can see, would you like it here or there? Would you like it in a box? Would you like it with a fox? Sam I Am just pushes until finally the guy tastes it and says, you know what? I do like it. And so people say, well, look, that's a successful sales call. They just didn't give up. And I will tell you, that's a book we all read. Millions of copies, one of the most popular children's books of all time. And guess what? It is a book that is a horrible listening skills teacher, because what happens? Somebody says, do you like green eggs and ham? And the guy says, no, I don't like green eggs and ham. And Sam Am comes back, would you want to hear, there, that? Not once they say, what don't you like? Is it the greenness, or is it the ham, or is it the eggs? What don't you like? And, if you think about it, we're all trained to be bad listeners. Anybody who's read that book thinks listening is pushing until finally you get your way. And I find that fascinating. And so children's books may not be the best guide, because if I rewrote that book, I'd say, Douglas, you don't like green eggs and ham. And I get it. You've probably never had it before. Is it the color of green that bothers you? Or don't you like eggs? Or don't you like ham? What part of it is? Now you might say, you know what? I like eggs and ham, but the green really bothers me. And I can say, listen, I can tell you now, it's a healthy food additive made from cassava, and it's actually really good for you. I have a chance, once I know your problem, to come back to you on it. And so anyway, this is very much in the news, Dr. Seuss. So I thought I'd throw that in for you.
Poor Dr. Seuss. He's turning over in his grave, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, speaking of books, you have written quite a few, and you've got another one you're turning out now, but you're also an executive of an international firm. How on earth do you find the time to turn out so many books?
That's a really good question. And whenever someone asks me, where do you get the time to do something? I always ask back, what do you do with all your time? What do you do? I mean, we have lots of time. And we just, we squander it. It doesn't mean you have to be working all the time, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to prioritize. You have to decide, I'm going to spend this amount of time. It doesn't take as much time as you think. I've been studying foreign language on an app because of, being bought out by an international company. And what I have found is 15 minutes a day, over half a year, got me pretty fluent in a foreign language. And so it's the consistency, it's the persistence, but it doesn't take lots of time. And writing is the same way. for me. I just spend a little bit each day. Maybe it's 1/2 hour. I learned this technique called Pomodoro from some students in my class, where you focus on something for 25 minutes and then take 5 minutes off. And I've really learned that from a student, because I asked students, like, how do you study these days? Why, you seem very good student. What do you do? And she told me this is what she does. And I've been using that technique for the last several years. It's fantastic. 25 minutes, I set a timer, 25 minutes of pure focus. I think we have been totally misled about the value of multitasking. We have tons of distractions, and we try to claim it as a skill. A distraction is not a skill. It's an impediment to great thought, deep learning, deep thinking. And so I really, really focus on no distractions. Multitasking is a stupid thing to do. It's not something to brag about. It's something that's keeping you from your very best. That's my opinion on multitasking. And it's also one of the key problems behind listening. People don't listen because they're looking at their phone. They're thinking about something else. That's a fact. When we are sitting in a conversation, in a meeting, in a sales, there's 100 billion things on our mind. And when you multitask, you tell your mind, hey, it's okay to have more than one thing on your mind. The human mind is brilliant if it focuses on one thing. I think it was Einstein who said, you all think I'm so brilliant, but I just focused on one thing.
Can you imagine people putting their phones down these days? We wish they would, of course, but
Like I said, it's considered a skill to do 3, 4 things at once. And that's really not the path to greater, deeper skills and understanding.
and I would suspect that if we could actually look behind the curtain, Steve Jobs probably concentrated on developing the iPhone, and he was not distracted as he did that.
Great productivity comes from concentration and exclusion of other things, not doing lots of things at once.
Cash, you have been very generous with your thoughts and observations. What would you like to talk about, though, that we haven't touched on? Could be anything.
I think in terms of people's career, people's jobs, I think listening skills in the workplace, bringing great listening skills to the workplace will really advance you, whether you're no matter what position you're in. Active listening skills, being someone who, after they hear something, brings it back with different words, to confirm understanding. I think what we fail to do is confirm understanding, and that means, did I come across? Did I answer your question? We tend to just fly on to the next thing, and so making sure that you've got that foundation down of, yes, your understanding with your partner, with your job, with your co-employees, with your boss. Did I answer that question? Are we done? I think many times we rush on. I think the biggest challenge is the pace of life, the pace of change is so rapid that it's gone beyond our humanness in many ways. And so we have to make the world work for us. We don't work for the world. So slow down, confirm understanding before you move on. And the world would be fine. The world would be better if we start doing that with each other.
One thing we forgot to ask earlier, and I apologize for that, because I like to get that up front as quickly as we can, and that is, where can our listeners and viewers get more information about you and your books?
Well, my website, cash@cashnickerson.com that's my email, but cashnickerson.com is my website. My books are all up on Amazon, and the new one coming in July is my 7th book, and I'm really thrilled with it. It took me a year working on it every day.
You've been watching the Bizgnus Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.